Hi, this is Ross Harrison with Precision Health and Fitness, and this is my fourth video on things you can do at home during the coronavirus pandemic, shelter at home, whatever you want to call it, which I guess just as of this morning got extended another 4 weeks or so. So we may be doing this for a while. And I don't know, last week I've been looking for some silver linings, and I guess as far as doing things at home, one of them is if you don't have equipment, don't have anything, this will sort of force some people to get back to some basics. And where a lot of people really do have a try to run before you can walk mentality, there's a lot of foundational stuff that people skip that ends up causing a lot of problems later. So last time I focused on the shoulder, today I'm going to focus on the lower back. And I'm going to say this up front. There is so much that you can do for the lower back. Whatever I go over today is just scratching the surface. There are so many things to improve strength, stability, control, pain, function, everything else. But what I'm going to share today is sort of the foundational piece that sets up every other exercise to work better. And this is one of the things that seems really simple and really basic, but I've had people just from doing primarily this, I'll call it an exercise, it's really just a muscle contraction, but just from doing this exercise get significant back pain to go away in under a couple weeks. The key, of course, is doing it correctly. And so this, when it comes to lower back pain, it really is, it's usually this area of the body, the abs in the front, the lower abs, that are the weak link in the chain. In order to correctly stabilize, support your spine, your lumbar spine in particular, the muscles around the entire spine should work together in a very coordinated fashion. Or for most people, the reality is the low back does the significantly more work than it should. Obliques and or the transverse abdominis, the horizontal abdominal muscle, don't do nearly as much as they should. A lot of times in front is where the major weakness is, because people tend to focus on the rectus abdominis, the vertical six-pack type muscles, but that's really not the muscle that's going to give you the most bang for your buck with protecting your spine. So I'm going to show you the very simple contraction that you can do to really start getting all of your muscles to work together better. And the key, I'll bring this up. You definitely do not need this. I'm just going to show this for just a little demonstration. This is a standard blood pressure cuff. So I'm just going to put it under my low back. And really this is just to give numerical information and to show a couple things, because there's some mistakes people make with this. And really all you're wanting to do, I guess the first step, and I should say this first, I always start with this. The first step is to just lay on your back and see if you can pull your belly button in. Most people can, but occasionally some people can't. Like, especially if it's a woman who's had a C-section or something like that, some of the muscles or the nerves may have been damaged to a point where the brain no longer has very good control of that area. And so even if you want to contract it, it doesn't really work. So if you can't pull your belly button in, that's a good sign that your transverse abdominis is really not doing much of anything. The good news is you can retrain it to start functioning. And either way, this is the first step. But so the other thing is pulling in might technically be the action that muscle takes, but it's not the action you want to train. So what you really want to train is a contraction of the muscle, not a pulling in. So in this case, when laying down, it's just simply a matter of when you contract, if anything, it may move up a little bit, and that's the contraction. If you're pulling in, you'll see, you'll get like a suction kind of effect. You don't want that. That's not actually the way to stabilize your spine most effectively. It's like creating a muscular weight belt. all the muscles around your body just sort of tense. And in this particular case, you want to focus primarily around your belly button, and it should feel like there's a contraction that extends horizontally around the range of the belly button. So what I'm using a blood pressure cuff for is just to like get a numerical reading of how much pressure I'm pushing down, because the contraction is only half of what you want to do. So in this case, and again, you totally like, this is just, I'm just going to show you this for, so if you do happen to have a blood pressure cuff laying around, sure, you can play with this. And once it's under your low back, you can inflate it to like 60. And then my goal when looking at this is first, and I'll just let you see this, first I'm just going to contract. And when I contract the muscle, it should increase, and it went up a little bit. And then the other half is pushing down with my lower back. But I don't want to push down as hard as I can. I just want to push down until that gets to about 90, which it's about there now. And the one benefit with the blood pressure cuff is if you go, I'm going to just go at 90 and then try to keep it, the needle at that point, which it's much easier to do in looking at it. But the steadier the needle is, the better abdominal control you have. And so a lot of times you may see like I'm intentionally going to move it up and down. That means like the muscle contraction is intermittent, or it might be too much and too little. So the point being, I just wanted to very quickly do that. Not that you need to train that with that, but just to give you an idea that it's not about pushing as hard as you can. So like sometimes what you see is when I tell people to contract the muscle and flatten their back, because really you are sort of wanting to, the goal isn't to flatten your back, but it's just the act of pushing your lumbar spine towards the floor and contracting engages the whole contraction better. And when that happens, there will naturally be a tiny shift in the pelvis. But when people try to contract as hard as they can, they'll typically push their feet down and like almost roll their pelvis backwards by contracting their hips. And that is actually one of the best things this does, is it teaches you not to do that. One of the biggest problems with lower ab function, low back pain, is that the hip flexors tend to do a lot of the work that the low ab should do. So these keep getting stronger and overworked, and the low back gets stronger and overworked, and the lower abs just over time do less and less. And this contraction, it literally is just a contraction. Contract here, push down against the ground, and when you push down, you want to make sure that your legs are as relaxed as possible. You might have a little tension in your legs, but if it feels like your legs get really stiff, or especially if you feel your heels or any part of your foot push into the floor, it means that your brain is training something else to work. And so relax as much as you can, tighten, flatten, and you should get a pretty good contraction. And initially, you'll probably know it's working well, because if you try to take a deep breath, or possibly any breath, and hold the contraction intensity at the same level, you won't be able to do it. Over time, you will. You can hold the contraction down here and still get a decent breath. You won't get as deep and full of a breath as if you were totally relaxed, but you can still do both. And so this may not seem like a lot, but just practicing this, like if you can hold it for 30 seconds, or sometimes initially it may even be just like 5 seconds and take a little break and do 5 more seconds. Work up to 30 seconds of a solid contraction. And you can do this almost as much as you want, because these muscles really aren't going to get super sore. Obviously, you don't need any equipment. The blood pressure cuff was just to show you a little feedback, like that, your whole body shouldn't move. It's just some tension, hold it. And there's a lot of exercises that go along with that. So like if that's easy, if you can contract and hold in 30 seconds and you feel a solid contraction here, you can go up from there. You can start adding some motion. You may have to move this, but okay, here. But yeah, you can, once the contraction is the key. And so, but you can start doing things like even just lowering a leg and holding the contraction. But the key is the minute, or the second really, that you either start losing contraction or you feel like your low back starts to come off the ground and curve, you've gone too far. That means that you've lost integrity in the spine. And this is all about being able to increase the integrity. So, and here's one of the things, like a lot of times you'll see the exercise where people are lowering both legs all the way to the ground and bringing them up. I rarely ever see anybody who can actually do that keeping their spine supported properly. They've actually, I was reading a list of the most contraindicated exercises lately from a few different places, and like a lot of them are saying, you know, the thing where people start with both legs on the ground and just raise up is bad for you. Just like the old traditional sit-up where people are holding your feet, it's bad for you. It does bad things to your spine. And a lot of the ab exercises we do actually put unhealthy pressure on discs and on the vertebrae, because really they're just overloading the muscles to the point where the spine itself has to take stress, and it's not supposed to. So doing this simple thing is what gets the muscles around your spine to better withstand higher levels of stress. Again, some other options, once you get comfortable with the contraction, lift both knees to about 90 degrees. And in this position, you shouldn't feel much. But if you lower both, or you can even just lower one, but if you lower both legs, even in a bent position just a little bit, the contraction here should increase dramatically. And again, keeping the back pushed down into the ground, if you can do both of those things, just that little motion, even just holding it, you will feel it. At least if it's correct, you'll feel it. If not, you may not feel much of anything. Another thing is when you can start adding motion. So, but again, you know, I'm going to repeat this over and over. If either the intensity of the contraction decreases, or your low back starts to arch, or you don't feel pressure pushing down, no matter where anything is, stop. But one of the other things you can do is start adding motion. Whether it's like both legs going up, legs going in and out. Some of these exercises teach control, some teach strength, some teach endurance. They all have a part. Another thing, and this is very common to see in a lot of exercises, but I'll just put it out there because it's a good rule to know. If your knee comes, well, my hip replacement doesn't bend that far, but this knee can. If your knee comes past straight up, like people are doing ab exercises where their knees are coming in really far and out, really whenever your knee goes closer to here, your abs take a break. It switches to your hip flexor, which is the thing that's already usually working too hard anyway. So anytime you're doing an ab exercise where the leg's moving, stop it here. And that will increase everything. Strength, endurance, control, all of that stuff. But really building up this part of your core tends to have the fastest, most significant impact on improving back health, function. You know, you can lift heavier things, you can move, you can rotate, you can do all kinds of things much better if that contraction works well. So when you're standing and actually doing things, you don't want to try to flatten your back in a standing position. You still want your natural curve, but when you flatten your back in this position on the floor, it teaches your muscles to function correctly when you're standing. It's really the goal of all of this isn't to see what kind of crazy exercise you can do, but it's really to build strength and control and endurance. So that when you are doing things, because your body stabilizes faster than your brain can tell it to. So your body has to learn how much tension, how much flexion, whatever, you need to maintain good core strength and alignment while things are happening. And those decisions are made subconsciously. And if your muscle's not strong enough to do what your body needs, your body will get that tension from somewhere else, usually your hip flexors, your low back. So this will train muscles to protect your entire spine and really make you much healthier with almost everything you do. And that's just one little piece, but it's the start piece. It's the one that once you have that in place, you can do so many other things and actually develop into much more complicated, much more integrated, complex movements in a healthy way. So that's it. That's low back, just a little piece, but it's one that has made a big difference in a lot of people's lives, and I hope it served you well. Thanks.